O-Sensei, when he talks, it's so concentrated. So, Bu and Shin no Bu Aiki is to, well, I mean, what they're saying here, they translate Wago no Michi. And the person translates that as harmony and unity. And you could translate it like Wa means circular, peaceful, and they usually translate that as harmony. And in a sense, when you say people have a harmonious relationship or something like that, that's correct, although it's not harmony, there's another word for harmony, as for instance it's used in music. But in that sense, you can say, right? And so the person has done very well, because that's harmony and unity, and of course Go, which is the same as Aikido, means unity, union. So, Wago, the way Wago Aiki is Wago. It's not learning how to do war, how to win a conflict, right? Or how to win an argument. It's not that. Usually we think it is, right? That is who, how to win the conflict, how to win the war, how to win, even a verbal war, verbal conflict. And of course he says, Aiki is the way of Wago. Now, again, he says, a person who attempts to bring the world into the relation of Wago, and here he said peace and unity. And peace, of course, is also a translation of Wa. So this is a very important word that O-Sensei uses a lot. Like, he calls Aikido Wago no Michi, way of Wago. And of course, in one of his, really clear poems, right, which many times Aiki, Yorosu no Wago no Chikara Nai. That is, Aiki is the power that comes from the relationship of Wago, right? Which here it could be peaceful unity, harmony, unity, right? It's all implied in that word, Wago. Unified connection, peaceful, harmonic, or not harmonic, peaceful, unified connection of everything, all with all, everything. Which of course they're now discovering is in fact the state of the universe according to quantum physics or quantum mechanics. So now, O-Sensei says, a person who is willing or who allows himself or will bring together Musubu. So they translate Musubu as bind together the world. That's okay, but you have bind, you see, somewhat English, it's an active subject-object feeling in it, which in Japanese you don't have. So you have the verb itself as the feeling in it, Musubu. The one who will, bring the world in this, with Musubu, right, which means knot, it also means spiral, it means tie, right? Tie the world together, I would say, tie the world with Wago, in Wago. Now whoever this translates uses the word, is a true person. And what they're trying to translate is the Japanese word which comes out of Shinto, which is Makoto. So we say a person is Makoto. One way to translate is say he's a true person. But that's not good enough, right? Makoto, that's what O-Sensei is talking about. Makoto. Someone has Makoto, means they come from this very deep place of reality, of oneness, of nothingness and so on. And this suffuses what they do. And as someone whose Makoto is related to the practice of Bu-Shino, It means that, again, that they do not, it's not anything to do with being stronger, better, faster, sharper, or anything than somebody else. It's not winning a conflict. It's not winning a war. It's not winning, even if you're attacked, and if they win, right, and they get you in some way, then you're defeated. So naturally you want to win, right, but that's not what true Buddha is about. True Buddha has to do with love. Then the quote goes, Aiki is the way of cultivating such genuine people who express Makoto. Aikido is a way of cultivating. And that's good, because cultivate is the word, of course, usually used in the basic sense of, usually means like in farming. You're cultivating the way you would cultivate a plant. But the practice of Aikido is to cultivate individuals who express Makoto in their life. Now he says here, it's quickly read this. To say knowledge, wisdom, physical health, virtue. And virtue, of course, is a very special word, which is comes from Confucianism. And it just means, it's like good vibes create good vibes. And it's like the good vibes that come from doing Aikido practice, the good vibes that come from being, from expressing what Aikido is, creates good vibes around, and people sense that, and that energetic thing that people sense is what is meant by virtue, which is actually an English translation of the Japanese word toku, which is a word that comes from Confucianism. Health, virtue, spirit. So what do they mean by spirit? Well, probably what they mean is, not and ki. And they're very important. And so, through practice, naturally, not out of I'm going to change myself, but naturally, the self and its spirit and its mind will become reformed, or I can say reformed, defined. And it's like the true self will appear, the true self, or the natural self, or reality, expressing itself as that person. In that person, the being, the natural being of the person, which is a being which is not separate from being, the whole thing. O-Sensei did use the word forge, right? And in a sense, in practices like that, because, it's certainly true, although it is all one, when that oneness is expressed, really expressed. So, for instance, in Japan, a good example is the real Japanese sword. The real Japanese sword is made in a state of trance. The great Japanese sword makers they fasted and they meditated, they went into cave, they didn't eat anything, they went into this very deep state. And in that deep state, they would make the sword. And the Japanese sword, you never know if it's going to be a success or not until the very end, when it's cooled down. You don't know in the process, you don't know. You're gone, and somehow this, in the end. But it's true, a real Japanese sword, a great Japanese sword, has intense spiritual energy in it. And that spiritual energy also has a vibration or feeling of beauty in it too. and mystery. And so in that sense, when O-Sensei says we forge ourselves, right, you know, it has a certain sense. So, you know, this forging that O-Sensei talks about, forging of the self, right, is mysterious. And it has to do with other dimensions. It has to do with reality as a whole. It's not something that can be analyzed and say, okay, I have these steps and I will do that. They never result, right? Nothing like that. And he says, that is to say, Aikido is misogi. What I'm talking about is misogi, purification in this large sense. And he says, through misogi, you forge, right? That's the word using to make the sword. You forge, he says, the great spirit of love and protection towards all things, right? On you, Aiko, which is one of the key phrases. I'm not sure here, I don't think O-Sensei did it. I think the translator trying to make a good English sentence through the word you forge. You can't forge Banyu Aiko. But that spirit, which is expressed by the word Banyu Aiko, loving protection of all things, the spirit of loving protection of all things, that has a vibration and a resonance, and it becomes the resonance of one's own energy field.